Okay, I'm setting up in YouTube, so we'll have to go and share the YouTube. Okay, I'm setting up in YouTube, so we'll have to go and share the YouTube. Okay, we're on live now. Okay, so welcome everybody. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few minutes to go and set up also in Facebook so that people know to come and find us here. And while Rhonda is getting ready as well, we'd like to show you a little video and something to really think about, because this we were seeing an economic downfall approaching, and this was worldwide. So we didn't know how they would go about in establishing this. And so actually now what we're trying to do is see the bigger picture, especially with the COVID and everything that's happening worldwide. So please stay tuned and we'll be right back with you. Okay. Now I'm going to do a share screen. Okay.
Okay, so you're already on Facebook?
We're already live.
Okay.
Rhonda. Okay, we're already live.
I'll start sharing. Just so everybody knows, I'm on here videoing with my phone so I can be on my computer. If you have any questions, I'm hoping there's not a huge time lag, and I'll be able to see them in Facebook and we can address them in the video if it's possible. So
right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this right now in Facebook. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Everybody's going to see. And this is the link to our live. Okay. Now that's done. And now we're going to go back to the video. So we'll have a few minutes for you to reflect on what's happening. And then after that, there's going to be a 10-minute video, the one that we've posted with James Corbett.
Oh, good.
We'll right back. So we're going to go and mute ourselves.
Okay.
And come right back.
Okay, good. And I want to layer in a lot of power shift stuff today. People are not understanding what it's about and how it's a solution. So I think that's where we need to start. Like, the tort's going to be, the more people we have signing the power shift, the stronger that tort is going to be. So with what's going on in the world right now and in Canada right now, there's no reason why we shouldn't be having hundreds signing every day. So. Okay, here we are. Okay, so I'm going to share this now.
Canada is being destroyed as a manufactured global economic collapse is on the way. PPP, private corporations, and the banking cartels are running our governments as a new world government. How will you protect your family? How will you protect your home, your job, and yourself? What type of future will our children have? What type of quality of life will they have before government axes the transition child benefit in November? And there's more to come. Debt will be rampant. We won't be able to recognize our country. Are you ready? What will you do? How badly would a global economic collapse affect the pensions and savings? Who could we turn to other than just ourselves? Politicians have guaranteed that we are in a dictatorship and not a true democratic country. Where will your family go? Will they be able to understand? Our politicians made sure that we have no way out. They have stolen our sovereign rights since 1931. The people are no longer protected. What else can we do? 5G is coming, and it's dangerous for us all. How do we protect ourselves and our children from it all? Will this be you? All this is done without our consent. We are supposed to be a free people in free countries, but exist as slaves. Who will be able to afford your services and products? Don't give up. Together, there is a solution. Join the Canadian People's Union. Stand up for your sovereign and veto rights to help save this country. You can find us at thecanadianpeoplesunion.com or at myfreedom2017.com. Thank you.
Okay, and we're back. Rhonda?
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, that was, that video was before the pandemic. And it's too bad that we don't have the COVID in there, because essentially it just adds on an extra dimension to it and another reality, a real reality to it. So anyways, right now my lighting at home is just from my window. Anyways, I'm going to try and fix that while we watch James Corbett and the video that Rhonda wanted everybody to see. And this is why we decided that today we were going to come to you and speak to you about exactly what he's talking about. And, James has been at this as long as I have. And we both woke up, I think, at the same time in 2007 and 2008. And we've been on this journey. So he and I kind of, how could I say, we'd be able to compare notes. When I started the Waking Giant back in 2008, was a website, and it was in, I kind of totally lost it when the H1N1 came about. And then what I saw was that the virus was a live virus in the vaccines that they were coming up with for the avian flu. And the avian flu, even the nurses, doctors, everybody knows that even with the avian flu, you can cook the chicken. The way that it gets passed on is if you don't cook the chicken good enough, properly enough, or any birds that might be carrying the virus, and then it transfers on to humans. But if you cook it, you can eat, you'll be safe. So for us, it was like, well, what's going on here? And then I saw that there was a bigger agenda. I was working on a hospital plan, so everything went to the wayside, and here we are today. Now with a new pandemic, a new threat that they are using, really to manipulate, because the facts speak for themselves, and the research, the proof is there. It's up to the people to look for it. So Rhonda, anything you want to add to that?
No, I've already been in here. Just so people are aware, we're using YouTube to do this live. So it's streaming from YouTube. If you're watching in Facebook, when you click on the link, it'll take you to YouTube. There is a chat. So you may have to, if you're not familiar with how YouTube works, you may have to click on your left-hand or right-hand side of your screen to open up your chat. And you can ask us any questions in there. It's, we're here to sort of educate and talk about solutions today on how we as the collective citizens and the collective constituents can actually start uniting and having some strength in what goes on in our country. So, and that's it. Oh, I lost Nicole. I'm not sure. I'll just keep talking then. So as Nicole said,
no, I'm still here.
Oh.
I'm just getting the video ready.
Okay,
Or-
so as Nicole said, the Corbett report is a really good source for facts. Like he doesn't delve into conspiracy theory. He doesn't, at least the videos I've watched, he hasn't delved too much into that. So it's based on facts and what he sees happening in the world, and applies it to Canada. He's got a very strong background in this type of work. So it's just nice to see somebody not delving into a lot of what's happening out there, and just giving us facts of what's really happening. And his latest video sort of hits home with exactly what's happening to all of us. So I'm going to put myself on mute so you guys don't hear my dogs throughout this. And I'm watching on YouTube. If you have any questions, just type them in and we'll get to them when the video's done. Thanks.
Hello, James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com, reporting to you from the socially close streets of Western Japan. In Walden, Henry David Thoreau famously observed that there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one striking at its root. And there can be no doubt that there are many thousands that are hacking away at the branches of the evil that we see spreading out before us in the name of this pandemic panic, diligently deconstructing the dissembling discourse of the disease doomsayers, and rightfully so. I count myself amongst them. However, if all we are doing is smacking down the lies that are being spread about this pandemic as soon as they arise, then we run the risk of missing that root of the evil altogether. So allow me, if you will, to take one hefty swipe at that root with my battle axe of truth by clearly stating and rejecting the new governing principle for society that we are being asked to accept on the basis of this pandemic pandemonium. Now, this new governing principle for society, of course, is implicit. I mean, we're going to sign onto it by our silent consent, not our explicit consent, but nonetheless, it rests on a hypothetical chain of infection that can take place in the event of a spreading infectious agent. Now, keep in mind, this has nothing to do with a novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. This is about a general principle. But the principle holds that if there is a spreading infectious agent of some sort that is hypothetically infecting people around the globe, and you might become infected by this agent, and you might end up passing it on to someone else, who might end up passing it on to someone else, etc., etc., and somewhere down that chain of infection, someone who is immunocompromised might end up becoming infected, and they might be part of that sliver of a fraction of a percentage point of the population who might die from the disease. And if that were to take place, well, of course, every single link in that chain of infection should be classified as a murderer. And in order to prevent such a mass murder from taking place, governments around the world are not just empowered, but actually obligated to implement a sort of de facto medical martial law by following the pronouncements of the duly unelected health authorities to do whatever they deem necessary to prevent such a hypothetical chain of infection from taking place, up to and including quarantining people within the walls of their own homes, and or entering those walls to forcibly remove people from their own homes.
And at the moment, in most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
We are being asked to accept this abrogation of our most precious freedoms, including our freedom to travel, our freedom of association and assembly, our freedom from arbitrary detention within the walls of our own home, our freedom of privacy in transaction and interaction, and other hard-fought freedoms that were purchased at the price of our forefathers' blood. on the basis of a novel coronavirus that is presenting a novel existential threat to humanity that has never before existed. But that, of course, is a lie, because every single flu season for your entire life, there have been just such hypothetical chains of infection that have taken place. And I have no doubt, let's put it on the table, I have no doubt that there is someone listening to my words right now who has been involved in some chain of infection that has ended up in some immunocompromised person dying. Never before has that person had to think of themselves as a murderer, let alone lock themselves within the confines of their own home to prevent such a murder from ever taking place again. But that is what we are being asked to accept right now. And I want this out on the table, because if we do not clearly articulate this principle that we're being asked to accept, then by our silence, we will consent to it. We will tacitly, implicitly consent to what is taking place right now. And I want to clearly state it and clearly reject it. Now, there may be some people in the crowd who disagree with me. So first of all, let me put something else out on the table and make it very clear that, of course, none of what I say is to in any way undermine the basic right that everyone has, everyone always has had, and everyone always will have to take whatever precautionary measures they feel is necessary in order to prevent such a chain of infection from taking place, including isolating yourself in your own home, wearing whatever protective gear you want, socially distancing yourself from anyone you come in contact with, or anything else that you feel is appropriate to prevent such a chain of infection. Of course, you have that right. But that negative right is now being flipped on its head into a positive obligation on everyone in society to stop all productive human activity, to lock everyone up in their homes, and to treat them as prisoners, tracking and surveilling everything that they do and everyone that they come in contact with on the basis of a hypothetical chain of infection that could take place. And I want that out on the table. If you agree with that principle and you think that is a good thing, then clearly state it. State it to my face. Oh wait, you can't, because you are a prisoner within the walls of your own home and you are not allowed into Japan, but you probably think that's a good thing. But at least say it to my digital face. Clearly state that you agree with the abridgment of our most basic freedoms on the basis of this hypothetical chain of infection. And clearly state where your line in the sand is. What do you think would be going too far for the government to do on the back of such a pandemic panic? Biometric ID, tracing and tracking every movement of every citizen at all times for the rest of their lives? Or the ability to march into people's homes to check for potential infections and forcibly vaccinate them if need be? Or any other number of measures that are now coming into view as a result of this panic. Where is your line in the sand? Clearly state it so that when that line is crossed, people will see that you are a hypocrite for cheering it on. Unless there is no line in the sand, and you think that governments are justified in doing anything that any presumed health authority says in the light of a pandemic situation. But at least state it openly and on the record. Don't hide behind vague, fluffy, woolly language. Tell us what you, specifically, not the agents of the state to whom you outsource your violence, but you would do in order to prevent people from living their lives in the event of a pandemic. There's a lot to think about here, and I hope you will do so. And join me in clearly rejecting this principle that we are being asked to accept right now. And if you do so, I think we will be getting a lot closer to striking at the root of this evil. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.
And we're back. So, okay, or I'm going to stop the share here. There we go. So Rhonda, can you come back now?
I'm here.
Okay. So, I mean, he's right on. I mean, you have to really look at what's happening. We are prisoners in our own homes. who is actually working out there, we have to look at who's out there, what the purpose of all of this is. And now they're preparing for a global, one world concert to thank all of the first line workers. I mean, thanking the first line workers, yes, yeah, I totally agree. But one world, come on, this is the new world order in the making. People need to realize that we do have options. We do have power. We're not so helpless. And that, yes, it's time for the power shift. Okay. What is the power shift? The power shift is Canadians taking our power over our governments as the last line of final decision-making authority in this country. It's not about removing government. It's about the Canadian people who foot the bill for all of these expenses to take back our power and to say yes or no to things like $150 billion bailout for the banks, who over the last couple of years, I could show you, have made huge profits, overestimated profits that they made. Like it was out of this world, basically. Okay, so what's going on? $150 billion. So now they're going to give most Canadians, $2,000 a month for 4 months. But you have to put that on your income taxes and claim taxes for that. And then you have to foot the bill for all of it, plus what they're giving corporations, plus what they're giving to the banks. $150 billion bailouts. They don't have to pay that back. Aren't you pissed off? How far do you think $150 billion would go in your pockets? Okay. So what we need to do is reverse the roles here. And that's what the power shift is about. It is our right, our legal right to stand up and take our country, put it back in the right spot since 1931, where this country does belong to the people. However, thanks to our politicians, the reason why we still have the Queen, and she has our sovereignty and still has sovereignty over us, even though the sovereignty was given to the Canadian government through copyright law to the United Kingdom, we are still bound by law, by strict constitutional law, to the decisions of the Crown in the UK. This was stated by the Master of the Rolls back in 1982 when Pierre Trudeau wanted to add our Charter of Rights and Freedoms to and remove the part where now Canada can now amend our Constitution. What does the word now, our Constitution is home, Canadians can now amend their Constitution? Canadians can now amend their Constitution. It doesn't mean we can change it. We can change all the laws in it, everything within it, but not who it belongs to. Copyright belongs to the United Kingdom government. The Queen owes her title to the United Kingdom government. What did Pierre Elliott Trudeau do in 1982? He threatened the UK with decolonization. He threatened the UK that if they did not agree to sign, to pass the Canada Act 1982 under their statutes, that he was going to formally decolonize us. So guess what? Here it comes. We have never been formally decolonized from the UK through copyright law. We pay a license, and so does 16 other countries. What did Canada do in 1931? It wanted to make sure that the Indigenous nations and the Canadian citizens could not take control of our governance. So they added a clause in the Statute of Westminster, which was written by Canadians, okay? Along with all of this was a coup by all of the politicians against the UK, 1931, to be able to have our independence, but for the politicians to control it, still under the semblance of the UK. With one thing that they count was that now the UK, okay, would have to agree to amend our constitution so that it's not the federal government that can do it or the provinces that can do it. And this way, while it would be fair, we'd get the UK to come and do it. So all of these years, they've been arguing over this stuff. So what happened in 1982 in the UK, they were terrified of what Trudeau was doing. Okay, totally terrified. Why? Because Trudeau was threatening them. And he wanted them to pass a statute that was illegal. Illegal to pass under UK law. Okay? Because what they were able to agree to was only to change that one clause in 1931, not say yes to a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That was illegal. And they debated it and debated it and debated it. Then finally, they saw their way out. We're going to wait till the courts in Canada, the Supreme Court in Canada, see what they say, okay? And of course, bought and paid for politicians also includes bought and paid for judges, okay? And the story goes on and on and on and on and on. So now we are left with a constitution that is still tied to this day to United Kingdom. So what can we Canadians do? Well, since 1960, we have the right to decolonization, which includes the right to self-governance and self-determination. The Indigenous nations had the right to self-governance and self-determination. And we were to come together and create a constitution for all of us working together, along with between the first constitution was between the English and the French. They were supposed to be equals on both sides to do this governance. So to explain to you how a government works, how was a government established in Canada? Because the UK was actually walking away back in the 1840s because they couldn't keep a handle on the French and the Indigenous nations. Not enough English people here. So what did they do? The ones who didn't like the fact that the United States was actually becoming, had actually become independent and had its freedoms, while those with titles were all losing their titles. They no longer had any power in the United States. Ha ha. So what were they going to do? They came to Canada. They made sure to separate the provinces. And what happened is the government, which is a business corporation, formed and consolidated all of the little businesses within between the four provinces. The provinces were only colonies that came together to form a business, and then they claimed their land rights. The land rights were not really land rights, they were trapping rights. Okay, that's what the business was all about. The Hudson's Bay Company turned into the Government of Canada. And there you have it. Welcome to reality. And welcome to humanity versus insanity, because this is what we're dealing with.
And back when Canada was founding too in 1840 and before the BNA Act in 1867, there were two families, one in Ontario and one in Quebec, two major elite groups. And those are the two that really formed our government. They made verbal agreements between each other. And this whole reason why Quebec has been so upset this whole time is because the Ontario group, once our government was formed and everything else, they actually went back on equality. Like Quebec was supposed to have equal power to Ontario in all things, and all of a sudden it just disappeared. They have equal power inside the Senate, but that's it. They were supposed to have equal power inside the House of Commons as well, and that didn't happen. And so since then, we've seen this big kerfuffle happening, and it's still to this day. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And just one more thing. I want to in Canada, we have been trained by our education system that decolonization applies only to Indigenous peoples. It doesn't. It is to Canada as a whole, the whole country. And also, Indigenous people are not just First Nations. The Indigenous people of Canada are the First Nations, the French, and by nature, Métis. So those are the Indigenous people of Canada.
yeah, true. So there's a lot of history there, you know, on what happened in our when we confederated. A lot of double-handedness happened by the UK and these elite that wanted to be able to rule in Canada and still keep their titles. So the reason why Canada is Canada today was all because of status and ego and title, and then the roads, you know, people.
Roads, railroads, all of that, the channels, all of that. And it was all of the contracts went to elite families who owned the companies, who and that practice has again continued to this day.
Right.
Even now, what's happening in our world today, the only people that aren't suffering are the people that are very politically connected with their corporations and everything else. None of them have, this has been wonderful for them. The rest of us, though, not so great. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And the irony of 1867, okay, is that when they formed government, what happened in Canada, it's not the people that formed the government, it's
No.
the elite that formed a government. And then what you have is, and the reason why the government is above the people and still remains above the people, is because now constituents can join that government. Okay.
Exactly. We only have democracy inside our political system. That is the only place we have democracy in Canada, which is why they can legally ignore us for everything except voting.
Exactly. And the reason why, again, we vote is to give away our power. The only ones who have democracy in Canada, it's not the people. Okay. Being able to choose your next dictator is not democracy. That is giving away your power for 4 years for somebody else to make all decisions above you. So now, because we're still tied to England, technically and constitutionally, we have no legal rights as it stands to change our constitution ourselves. Okay, to remove it.
Except for one way.
Well, the thing is the way that it's set up, it belongs to the UK. It legally copyrights and our governing system. Okay,
Right.
Go ahead.
The first step to start changing all of this, there is one crucial first step, and that's the power shift.
Yeah, but I'm trying to explain first how that document.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
About, okay? So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but for people to understand our Constitution, like I said, the copyrights and the patent rights belong to the UK. So because of these copyrights and patent rights, that Constitution does not belong to Canadians. Okay, it does not truly belong to the Canadian government other than through a licensing. This is why we also have to pay for a licensing for the Queen to be on our money and all this. And they'll say, well, the Queen is the Queen of Canada, not, you know, and that's it. Canada is totally separate. Yes, we're separate in some ways in self-governance, but not in self-determination. And this is what needs to change, because legally that has been our right since pre 1867. Okay, but all of a sudden these elite went back to England and said, oh, look, now we can we can still rule here. So help us do a constitution, and then people will buy it, right? Because they didn't have any phones back then. They didn't have, ways of communicating so good. And they still thought that England's going to come in with their military and, slap us down. And, oh, well, we belong to England. And what happened is they brought in more English people to outweigh the indigenous nations and the French. And there you have the story. So the French always claimed that they had, when they formed government, they agreed to 20 on each side, and they would govern together. So that's why Quebec has always claimed, the French have always claimed the right to veto power in Canada. However, that was when that was all sent to the UK. The gentleman who was spearheading this for Quebec was 90 years old. So by the time everything came back from the UK, he had passed on and nobody really knew what happened. But they said, well, because that's up to the crown to decide in the UK, the imperial government is the crown in the UK. And the imperial government decides who's going to be king or queen. Okay? They own the queen. So get that through your head. Okay? So now the way that this kind of happened is when it came back, they said, well, we can only put it in our legislation. Like we can't put it in the Constitution itself because that belongs to the crown. Only the crown can do that, the king or queen at the time. Well, actually it was the queen, it was Victoria. So anyways, long story short, now we're up to 2020. And the people of Canada still have no say. So legally in Canada, we have 0 rights other than our personal rights. Exactly. However, we were given a collective right in 1960, legally at the international level. All peoples in all countries have the right to decolonization measures through self-governance and self-determination. We can decide as many times as we want together collectively as to what happens in our country. Do we accept international law or do we refute international law? Do we follow it or what do we do? It's up to us to decide. However, that was never given to us. They said that we were allowed referendums, but that was up to the government to decide if we were going to have them. Now, hang on, I'm just going to finish this, okay? Back to 1982, Pierre-Luc Trudeau is threatening decolonization, okay? The UK is upset because of this Charter of Rights and Freedoms because they hadn't given their people any rights or freedoms. So what's that going to do? So we have all of the documentation, and this is why it's important for the people to follow, because we only have a fine line where we do have rights. And we can't fall off of that because we have so many limited rights. Okay. As far as human rights, they say, oh, you guys are lucky. You've got all these, personal human rights, but the government can take that away at any minute. And they have. Look at yourselves. Where are you sitting right now? What rights do you have?
You can't even go and enjoy a drive in the park right now without being pulled over and questioned why you're there.
Yeah. And, if you don't keep your 6 feet apart, then you become a murderer, a possible murderer. This is where we're getting to. This, as insane as this sounds, it's exactly in the direction we're going to, and it needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. Canadians need to wake up to the fact that we can decide how much money we're going to print, not borrow, because this is what they're trying to do, make the provinces borrow money. We have no reason to need to borrow money. We have all of our human resources, all of our natural resources. All of those things are protected for us if we stand together.
Exactly.
Legally,
and that's huge. Yeah. And that's huge. We legally have to stand together. Legally. We can't just complain on social media. We can't just protest in groups. We legally must unite. And that's what the power shift is doing. It is each person signing their own declaration that they want to unite with everybody else who is signing to have our collective rights in the Constitution. And so when we have enough people, what that means is it will trigger a constitutional amendment. No one can deny it. The Supreme Court can't deny it. The government can't deny it, because this, in a way, is our own private referendum. Once we have enough people, it just has to happen. Like, there's just, if they deny it,
it is dictatorship.
it's dictatorship. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
and in a dictatorship, we have the right to rise.
exactly. So right
Right.
now we don't have the right to rise. They can come in with military and do anything they want to us. However, once we have enough people signed with this power shift, and it's really called the Convention of Consent, because you're consenting your right to unite.
Yeah.
So you are giving your right to unite with everybody else who signs it. And how the Constitution will be amended is the Queen will be removed, and the people will be, the collective will be placed where the Queen is. We can keep our Governor General, like everything else in our political system can stay as it is, but everybody now answers to the people. So if the people decide, they can direct the Governor General however they see fit. They can do what, it just causes a domino effect to give us finally a final say over our governments, all levels of government.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the beauty of this. This document was written in 2014, and not for no reason. Okay, it was to give back the power to the people that we actually never had, except for a short period of time between 1867 and 1812. Okay.
Yeah. And it's private, it's safe, it's legal, and it can be done in your own home in about 5 minutes. It's all online. There are no print copies for privacy reasons. It is all done digitally. So it can be done from your phone, from your tablet, from your computer, and it's all done at www.thepowershift.ca.
Yeah. So this is why we wanted, like, I mean, if you're looking at everything and you want to protect your children and you don't want to be stuck in your homes forever, when you look at all the facts around this COVID virus, you have to wonder, because what I've been doing I've been away for about a month and a half, and what I've been doing is really monitoring a friend that we had in regards to her kidney disease and then her heart disease and all of this. And within 3 weeks, we were able to stabilize it to the point where the doctor says, okay, I won't bother you about dialysis anymore, because your CKD stage 5 end of life is now stable. We need to look for something else. Okay. So don't take the medical association at their word. And what I'd like to say right now to the medical association, given what's going on right now, I know you guys are getting a huge, oh, wow, now we're going to get equipment, and you're getting some funding, and you're getting maybe bonuses. But what we need you to do is stand up through common sense. See what you're doing, because you are helping. You are helping imprison the entire planet. You are helping to recolonize the entire planet, all of the countries, into one world governance that has been established since 2017. Everything has been prepared, okay? Even this virus. Mm-hmm. So you can either choose to look at the reality, do your research, sit there and think what is best for you, and your family, your children. Who is best decide for you, your family, and your children? You or a government that will be imposed above everybody worldwide? Where are you willing to lose the rights to your territories for the indigenous nations? Because now what's happening is, because of this pandemic and under emergency measures, our rights no longer exist. Your treaties no longer exist.
Bill C-14 that just passed this past weekend, this past Saturday in the House of Commons, nobody is talking about Section 2 of that bill. Section 2 of that bill comes into effect in October. And what it allows the government to do is to seize any assets they see fit from people and sell any assets they see fit without any consultation to the people at all. It can all be done in private.
Exactly. So welcome to your new reality. But only you, along with each and every one of us, we have a responsibility. Every person must take action in signing their Citizens Convention of Consent. That doesn't cost you anything. However, there's still a legal aspect to this where we need your help. Everybody who is getting some funding right now for the government, please invest it wisely. Invest it in the future of you and your children and this country, so that we can, yes, go to court. Yes, we can bring this forward.
Exactly.
Because
because there is a whole court action happening with this too. Yeah.
Well, this is when we were getting ready to file, all of this happened, and it was like, okay, well, now let's look at this here. So your cat just went by. So anyways, what's happening with this here is that it is a setup, but the people can get together. Okay, it's how do I call it? It's not, I can't call it blessing in disguise, because what's happening is they're claiming that people are dying from the COVID virus. I personally, I'm not afraid of it. I have no fear from it, because when you do the research, then you see the rest of the story. If you know about all of the mistakes that they've made with penicillin, antibiotics, not penicillin itself, but antibiotics, then this is what I want to show you, okay? Because what happens is they're focusing on all of the elderly. My background, again, is in regards to infection-controlled environments and trying to protect people from that. So when this came out, I went, okay, well, let's see here, because C. difficile has killed more people, okay, millions of people worldwide. And this is just a fragment of deaths that they are claiming has occurred under COVID-19, okay? Look at what are they trying to hide? What are they covering up? Huge mistakes in pharma with antibiotics. Huge mistakes in hospitals with contamination of C. difficile. What is C. difficile related to? It's also related to E. coli. What is E. coli related to? Feces. Okay. When I was looking at the information, there was a huge upscale in C. difficile cases, and then going out into the community. Well, why is this happening? 71%, okay, of C. difficile cases, affected cases, were males. Well, 71%. Why is that? Okay. So now, when I started looking into this, C. difficile comes from dirty hospitals as well, okay, and uncleanliness in the fingernails, okay, when you're cleaning or doing anything or touching people. This is where, it's not just that they'd have poop on their hands, but under their fingernails. How many men, actually, I'm not blaming the men here, but how many men actually clean under their fingernails and wash under the fingernails when they go to the bathroom? So we've had an upsurge of immigration, and this is how I started seeing it, okay? Immigration, people taking PSW courses, to get jobs in the communities and into the nursing homes big time. China has bought out all of most of the nursing homes in BC, and then Quebec as well. Quebec has the highest numbers of C. difficile. It was just phenomenal as to what was happening. So when I was looking at all this, and then what happens is C. difficile can be caught as well through antibiotics, okay? Antibiotics can cause C. difficile, which actually starts in the gut with diarrhea and everything else. So when you look at everything, you see that this COVID virus is not what you need to fear. What we need to fear is our governments worldwide. What we need to fear is the World Bank organization that is actually controlled by the United States. Okay, let's be honest here. We've got all of this information and we can prove it. Yes, Rhonda?
We have some people have been asking some questions. So, once you've signed and we have our constitutional amendment, so we're now the collective, and so how do we hold our governments accountable? How does this work? Well, we don't have an answer for that. However, it's already been laid out for us, not only by the power shift by von Leyen, but also by other people who have been studying this as theses inside of the political universities, like inside the political departments of the universities. This has been studied a lot as to how we can get the collective constituents as a part of our own governance. Our government spends billions and trillions every 4 years for select polling and select surveys. The idea is to stop that and instead layer in each riding across Canada, so 338 ridings, layer in what are called constituent committees, or whatever they're going to be called. So layer in, almost like you have your MP office right now, that you can sort of, they have their administrative office or whatever. There would be a constituent citizen area, and it would then poll those constituents. You would be able to have open houses. You would have, they would have the pulse of what's needed in your area, right at home in your backyard. So it puts everything back down to the community level, and then the decisions go from the community level up, instead of a political party deciding what we need. And that's all that's dealt with inside of our political system.
Exactly. And what happens with governments is they have to give us, they are only obligated to give us the bare minimum, the basics, okay? And that's reality. So what also would happen in the power shift, okay, when you read von Leyen's book, technically it's, again, it would be the politicians would have to go, the politicians would no longer have final decision-making authority over the people, depending on what we allow them to decide upon without needing our assistance. We can just focus on the main issues because we are all the shareholders, co-owners of the Crown Corporation of Canada, except the copyright belongs to the Queen. Well, the UK government, like, hello. We don't have the rights to our patents. We don't have the rights to all of these things. The government does, but not the people.
That's right.
Our natural resources.
That's right. So when you come up against somebody who says this could never work, this could never, we're going to have mob rule, we're going to have all of this stuff happening. Well, first of all, we have mob rule under our existing system. The only problem is it's not the majority that are making the decisions, it's the minority. And the majority are forced to comply with what the majority of them don't want. So we have mob rule, just a very different version of it. We have a system of governments for 150 years that has brought us to where we are now. Is it working? No, we don't want to scrap it completely, but let's look at starting to tweak it, to layer in this constituent, to layer in us, to layer in what we need in our communities, to layer in what we need. Canada is so large and so diverse. Our people are so different from area to area that to continue with this one size fits all governance is insanity. It's insanity. And it's actually what keeps us apart.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'd like to do as well is, like, as a people, we have the power to decide our future, but we need to be able to get together to do it. And there's another little video that I'd like people to listen to, because we have been trained really to look at ourselves as only as employees, not entrepreneurs. Right. We are entrepreneurs here. We have a country that's been built together by the sweat of everybody. And, a lot of pain and aggravation and drama that came along with it because of those who wanted to control. Now we can free everybody of that control. What the COVID virus can do is help free the planet instead of recolonizing it into a prison planet by the elite.
Exactly. We have a very unique opportunity that they've given us thanks to this virus. But if we waste it, if we sit in our homes and do nothing, we can still sit in our homes, be safe, by all means, be safe. But you can do something. And that is sign your convention of consent, get involved, begin to get tapped in, have discussions with your children around the government of Canada. We have become a very disconnected society to how we're governed. We actually have for decades checked out of our own governance, because what can you do? You vote every 4 years and that's it. Why bother? Why bother with all the drama that's thrown around in the news? You can't do anything about it anyway. So really just show up and vote and that's what people do. That's what the vast majority does. They just show up and vote every 4 years, and they pay no attention to anything else. They, they complain at Coffee Row and stuff like that, but can't do anything about it anyway. They're just going to do what they're going to do. So let's stop that mindset. And for the first time in 150 years, we are being given an opportunity, and thanks to technology, we have a fantastic opportunity to finally unite as a large enough body. And it doesn't matter what your political swing is or anything like that. It's just, do you want to have a Canada that's for the people, or do you want to have a Canada that's being governed by people who don't even live here? That's the two options. That's the road, the what do you call it, the two paths that we can take right now. And yeah.
So there's a little video that I want you to listen to, and really listen to it, because we've been programmed. Okay, we are supposed to be entrepreneurs. This no longer becomes about socialism. This no longer becomes about capitalism. It becomes about the people sharing a country between the Canadians and the Indigenous nations and flourishing together, and to also offset the evils that are trying to take over all of our natural resources and our lives. So the decision is yours, but please listen to this. So I'm going to do a share screen for you, and this will be interesting. Okay, I'm just gonna move this along here. But when I listen to this, and this is about the black swan, the economy, that's what's happening, and they're calling it a black swan. But this gentleman really, although he's selling his stuff, really listen to what he's saying, because it's so true as to what he's saying. So now I'm going to close myself off and start this for you.
Rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Robert.
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Right. Keep them poor. So my father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. I said, but you get a job to earn money. He goes, no, you're supposed to just get a job. And I went, no. Isn't the purpose of a job to earn money? He goes, you're correct. I said, so why don't I just learn about money? I can skip the job part, And he got flustered and he said, if you want to learn about money, why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? And I said, why? That's Mike. So I asked him. He says, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm a government employee. And I went, oh, what's the difference? He says, the difference is an entrepreneur must know about money, or they're no longer entrepreneurs. And he says an employee doesn't have to know anything about money. because the government will take care of them, the company will take care of them. So I'm all confused. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old. Teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid, you know. But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And finally, through persistence, my rich dad started teaching me about money on one condition. And that condition was he would never pay me. He says, the moment I pay you, you think like an employee. He says, that's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. And now I'm 9 years old, my head's going cracking in half. He says, you never want a paycheck. You understand that, kid? I said, okay, I got it. And he says, well, how do I make money? He says, that's what entrepreneurs figure out. It's like, so how do I learn about money? So he would just break out a Monopoly game board. So I would work for free. I'd pick up cigarette butts and he had hotels and restaurants and I would clean and do menial tasks. And as I got older, I started getting into office work and marketing and accounting. And I was an apprentice basically, but I always worked for free. And he would teach me about money. But the way he taught me about money was playing Monopoly. And I finally one day I got upset. I said, well, when are you going to teach me about money? He says, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He goes, no. What do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He says, what do you think we're doing? So I don't know. I'm teaching you about money. And then that's when, you have one green house. He says, there's many formulas for great success in money. There's thousands of them. But one of the best ones is found on the game of Monopoly. It still is today. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. I said, what? He says, one of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. Is that all there is? He goes, that's it. And he says, what do you think I'm doing? And I went, I don't know. So then he took me out and he showed me his greenhouses. And 10 years later, when I was 19, I was now in school in New York, and I come back to Hawaii, and Rich Dad had bought the biggest piece of land smack dab in the middle of Waikiki Beach. And when you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll see the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That was his hotel.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Acquired assets and they became bigger assets.
He just kept what's called an assemblage because that property wasn't that big at the time. So he had to buy out all the small guys. Because Waikiki was a little dirt water little town. So he'd buy out this shop owner and buy that shop owner. And it took him a while, but he finally assembled this large piece of property. And then he and Hyatt put up this giant hotel. It just sold for $800 million. So that's how I learned about money. I've had financial crashes. I've had people stab me in the back, but they're all good because I grow from it. That's spirituality. Right. People who are afraid of making mistakes, like they teach in school, they don't ever grow. Because spirituality is there's good and there's bad, there's right and there's wrong, there's up and there's down. Most people only want to be right. They only want to be positive. Well, you can't have that. That's not reality. Well, I wasn't poor by most people's standards, but I came from a family with a poor attitude, if you know what I mean. Because rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude. Poverty is passed on. It's taught in your families. And middle class is taught in families. And so the people right now who are sitting at home, who are struggling.
The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, lied, covered up the truth, and has put
financially or worried about money or unhappy. They may be making a lot of money, but unhappy with what they're doing. It was probably taught to you. Your superego was taught, get a job, work hard, or you'll never be rich, or the rich are evil, or whatever. The school system will never teach you about money. The school system was designed to teach you to be an employee, which is important, or a doctor or a lawyer, a specialist, but never about money. And what most people lack is real business knowledge. like accounting, like debt, like taxes. You got to know that stuff, but they don't teach it in school to anybody. So, and then when people ask me, how did your rich dad learn this when your poor dad, a PhD, didn't? And the answer is very simply, my rich dad, who's my best friend's father, his father died when he was 13. So rich dad had this family business at 13 to run. So he had to drop out of school, which was his blessing. There's blessings, and sometimes a blessing doesn't look like a blessing, but it turned out to be a blessing. And then his teachers became his bookkeeper, his accountant, his attorney, his banker, his real estate agents. So he has what I call real teachers, not these fake teachers in school. You see, most teachers in school, they're out of ethics. They teach subjects they themselves don't practice. I asked the teacher, I said, I'm in my third year of calculus now. It was called strength of materials. I said, am I ever going to use this stuff? He goes, no. I said, why do you teach it? He says, because I get paid. I said, do you ever use it? He goes, no. And that's why, you have to, in life, one of the things I suggest to people, you got to find a real teacher versus a fake teacher. And a fake teacher is somebody who doesn't do what they teach. And a real teacher is doing what they teach every day. So my accountants, my attorneys, they're in it every single day. And that's how I learn, because every day I'm solving problems in my business. So I have accountants and attorneys and bankers and all these people on speed dial because I'm solving problems with my team.
I see you giving this knowledge out, and do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Robert?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Right. Keep them poor. But, unfortunately, the poor, as was in the Bible, I'm not real religious, the poor will always be amongst us because it starts up here.
Right. It's that fear mentality.
It's in their words, and the words become flesh. Again, I'm not really religious. I flunked out of Sunday school also. But when they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they go down. They become what they say. My PhD daddy says, what do you think I am, made of money? I can't afford that. And my rich dad would say, that's why he's poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time. Because it's an escape. It's an escape, you know what I mean? It's easy to say, I can't afford it.
And your rich dad used to say what instead of, I can't afford it?
How can I afford it? How can I do that? What would it take, or why should I do that? He says that a question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. See, when you say, I can't afford it, your mind shuts down, and you become what you say. Rugby is a team sport, but so is soccer. The rules are different. And other people are golfers. They play by themselves. And so everybody's different. So my game financially is business, number one. Second is real estate. So what I say to young people is, you find your game.
I think that that speaks volumes. We are a team of Canadian people. It's time to really build up this team. And what can happen with once we've created our big team of citizens standing in your rights, all you have to do is go online, sign your Citizens Convention of Consent, help us support this endeavor, because it's not going to fall out of the sky by itself. We'll still need funding for this. And while the governments have been, helping a little bit, they're not doing even anywhere close to what they should be. And any politician that doesn't want to give Canadians our rights and the Indigenous nations as the final decision makers in our Constitution is in it for themselves, is in it to disrupt, is in it to keep us down, is in it to keep us poor. Are you fed up of being poor? Only you can change it. Each of us have a responsibility to change that. We have a beautiful country. It's diverse. It's huge. So if we allow them to con us with this COVID virus, and people refuse to really look at the underlying reasons, people die every year of the common cold, more so than anything on this planet. C. difficile is again number 2 for infectious diseases. What are the governments hiding? I will do another share screen so that you can see for yourself. A lot of recalls have been happening with antibiotics. They're given to seniors. They're given to all kinds of people, children. So when you're asking yourself, oh, why did these children die from COVID? It's actually just another aspect of why they died. So unfortunately, I'm not a coroner, okay? And I'm not a medical professional. But if I could, and I knew what to look for, I'd want to do autopsies. And I think that the families who have been touched by this COVID virus that they are claiming have killed their family members or whatever, you have a huge, huge chance to a good lawsuit on your hands with everything that's out there, as long as the medical professionals become honest and start speaking out. Without them, we have nothing. And without them, they will be helping to ruin the lives of 7 billion people on this planet if they do not speak up. That's our reality. So now I will do, you have anything to add, Rhonda?
I'm just going to say that I'm going to sign off right now. I have some other stuff that I need to do, and we're at the hour mark. So I'm just a little over the hour mark. And
okay.
Yeah, so maybe what we could do is we can cut this one off and start another live with the second part of, do you know what I mean? So
yeah, actually what we can do is, I had it on the screen there, and what we can do is put in the links so that you can see where the FDA has recalled antibiotics. And
not just antibiotics, there's tons of recalls that are happening right now. So, and every day it seems like there's like 5 or 6 more. So, you know, and there's huge issues with drug supplies right now. Like life-saving medication that people need to stay alive isn't being, like, they're being shorted prescriptions and stuff like that right now. So
yeah,
anyway, there's just a whole other like 2-hour discussion that we could have.
For sure.
I need to go though. So yeah.
So anyways, think about this. Go to thepowershift.ca, HTTPS, thepowershift.ca. Do all that you can. Do it now. Help any way that you can. Tell your family and friends to do the same thing. We're all at home now. You have the time. There's no excuses. You want to protect your future? Move forward and help us create our Canadian team to save our country, our people, and a real sustainable healthcare system where everybody would now have a say in what we want and how our country is going. Because right now, we no longer have, we've never had our collective rights given to us. They've been denied to us. It's time that we take it back. So thank you, Rhonda, and everybody for listening in. We're going to start doing this more because now I'm free completely.
Yeah.
And just stay tuned and we'll catch you right up to par on these. And just look into the comment section, not the comment section, but in the description section. And we're going to put up the links for you. Happy hunting and happy research and happy awakening to your newfound wealth, because you own a country. We all do. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody. Stay safe. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.